now that I have the neck removed from this Mossman Tennessee flat top guitar, comes a task of carving the neck heel in such a way that it sets back the angle of the neck and creates a better action so this guitar can be back to playing the way it was intended. Okay, so now it looks like the glue joint is clean, but it comes together tight. So now I'm going to work on changing this angle. I'm not going to remove this heel cap. I'm just going to keep this as is, and I'm going to mark off about 32nd or so, and then chisel all this away. This heel already has a little bevel, so I just have to remove this top surface and then all this back here. So kind of an interesting design. Let me mark that off. I'm going to set my calipers for 32nd. I'm going to put this piece of tape right on the line. So that's how much material I'm going to remove from this heel. It's going to taper from that point. It's from all the way to 0. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and then start removing material. Okay, so now with the chisel, you can see I'm pretty close to that line. Now I'm going to take a little sandpaper and get it right on that line, and then check to see how that fits. I can see I got a little bit of separation from the top, a straight edge of frets, and it is clearing the bridge by quite a bit actually. Well, I don't want to take any more off than that. Just to even it up a little bit, I'm going to do some pulls with some sandpaper, and then I'm going to call that good. See if I can get this a little bit flatter right here. I'm gonna work some material off that. That's much better. Let's see if we're getting hung up here now. Still getting a little rock. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bolts inside and tighten them up and see how it sits. Kind of assess what's going on at that point. Okay, now the bolts are snug. Well, we're well over the bridge. Fuck, that's a lot of clearance. Is this extension in the way? A little bit. Extension's pulling it down a little bit. I don't think I overset it. I only took 30 thousandths off. That's not a lot. Well, I think what I'm going to do is get a set of strings on here and see what happens. So let me string it up, get a saddle in there. I'll find a saddle, something that fits. The other one was too low, so let me get a higher saddle and see where we're at with the action. Okay, I've got a set of strings on here. Now, when I check this relief, I've got about 15 thousandths relief. So the neck, you know, the truss rod is loose, so it's pulling it up a little bit. I'll be able to correct that some, but let me show you what's going on here. This is one thing. I think this has definitely gotten worse here, this deflection. So if I check this, put a straight edge across the body, touch on that backside, I can get about an 83 thousandths feeler gauge on this side. So I'm going to loosen the strings and then remeasure it and then take note of what that deflection is, because the action, you know, it is a tall saddle. It's probably about 3/16 of an inch. So it's not super tall. It's a little taller than, you know, I'd like it to be. But the action is still about 6/64, maybe 6.5. So, yeah, so we need to figure out this deflection. It's deflecting quite a bit. So the straight edge on the saddle, the fact that it's a little high is not going to be intimidating anymore, because I think I need to take a little bit more off that angle actually to get this corrected. I think I'm going to tighten the truss rod and restring it, let it sit overnight under tension and see if this deflection changes at all. And then I'll really make some adjustments at that point to the neck heel. So it's a bit of a process, but I want to get this right. So let me loosen the strings and we'll remeasure that deflection. Okay, strings are loose, and checking the deflection now with these feeler gauges, it's about 53. So it comes up about 30 thousandths overall. So it's about 15 thousandths deflection on this top. So I'm going to get the tension back up, remeasure it tomorrow, and see if that changes from 83. If not, if it holds at 83, then I'll just kind of consider that when I go to remove material here. So check in with this tomorrow and see how it looks. Okay, it's been sitting for a couple of days under tension, and the deflection has not changed too much. So given the current action, the height at the 12th fret, I'm about 6/64 and about 5/64 on the treble. And he wanted 3 and 4, although I don't know how well it's going to play at 3 and 4, so I'm going to shoot for 4 and 5 and see what that looks like. Right now the relief is pretty good. I got the truss rod adjusted. I probably only have about 6 thousandths relief in the center of the board. So I think the neck angle is going to work at this current height here. If I remove, to get this down to where he wants it, I would have to remove a 1/16 of an inch off the bridge, off this saddle here. And right now on the low side it's 178. So even taking off a 1/16 of an inch, it's still around 1/8 of an inch, which is good. 3/32 is all you need for the height of this. 1/8 is good, but 3/32 is okay. So I'm gonna just go with the neck angle here. It's holding pretty well with these 2 bolts. I was gonna redo the fasteners in here, put inserts, but those bolts, I'm thinking, why would I do that? The bolts are holding really well. They're in the guitar, they're not going anywhere. It's been sitting like this for a couple of days. The neck joint is really tight. There's no flex, there's no give. So I'm just gonna run with this, put it back together. No glue in the joint. I'm just going to glue down the fingerboard extension. That's going to hold it. Let's get started gluing this down. Okay, just gonna let that dry overnight, and this thing should just about be ready to go. So here we are strung up now, and I installed an LR Bags pickup for them. And so the owner of the guitar had strings that are lighter than the gauge that I had originally set this with. So the truss rod needs to be adjusted because, hear that buzz? It's buzzing on the lower frets here, which means the relief is not quite right. It's pretty flat. So I don't know if you have a Mossman guitar or not, how you adjust that truss rod. The only thing I'm able to find that will work is a little wrench like this. I'm thinking of making one out of a 3/8 open end for him so he can do it. But this little guy is the only one I can get in there. So I got to take the pickup out, take off the strings, open it up, and get in there and loosen that truss rod a little bit, bring it up to pitch, and hopefully that'll be the right position. So kind of a pain in the butt, but here we go. Got to do it. So it turns out that not only the truss rod needed to be adjusted, the nut is also a little low. And we're going to go ahead and shim the nut. It's got to come up about 10 thousandths or so. So here's a nice easy way to add a shim to a nut like this. First thing, you just want to make sure no finish is crept up around this nut, so when you go to remove it, it doesn't cause any damage. So just gently score around it. Because this is inset so deep, I didn't want to knock on it, so I figured I'd pull it out. So see how easy it comes out. So now that the nut is removed, I got a piece of maple stock. This is about 20 thousandths, so it's a little thicker than it needs to be, but I'm going to go ahead and use it and then take it down. But what you do, put a little super glue. It's going to clean up the bottom a little bit. And put a little super glue. Just run a bead right along the base of it. Let it set up for a second or two. So once you adhere that down, score around it. Now with it slightly oversized, it's going to sand down the overlap. Now let's see if we got a buzz on that D string. Sounds clear now. Let's hear it with the pickup. Thanks for watching.